You've been told it's good for you, it shows up in fitness magazines, it's praised by influencers, and even found in hospital cafeterias. But for older adults, especially after 60, this so-called healthy food could be quietly putting your heart at risk. So what is it? Granola. Yes, the crunchy, nutty, fiber-filled mix that's often called a heart-healthy breakfast choice. But the truth is more complicated. And if you're over 60, the wrong granola could be doing more harm than good. Let's explore why this matters and how to protect your heart before the damage begins. Part 1. Why granola isn't always the hero. Let's be honest, granola looks healthy. It's golden brown, crunchy, full of oats, nuts, seeds. It smells like honey and cinnamon. It feels rustic, natural, even comforting. And for decades, we've been told that it's the perfect heart-healthy breakfast in hospitals, in health blogs, even in doctors' offices. But here's the hidden truth that most seniors don't realize. Granola, the kind you find in most grocery stores, may be slowly harming your heart more than helping it. Especially after the age of 60, when your body's defenses become more fragile and your heart demands quieter, more precise care. Let's take a deeper look. The granola illusion, why it seems healthy. Granola often starts with rolled oats, nuts and seeds, dried fruit, a touch of honey or maple syrup, coconut flakes, or cinnamon. So what could possibly go wrong? The problem is how it's made and what's added along the way. Most commercial granolas, the kind that come in colorful bags with words like clean energy, heart smart, or fiber boost, are ultra processed. That means baked at high temperatures, damaging fats and oils, loaded with added sugars to improve taste, sprayed or mixed with vegetable oils for crunch and texture, often contain preservatives, artificial flavors, and even synthetic vitamins. It's not the oats or almonds that hurt you. It's the industrial food process turning them into a candy bar in disguise. After age 60, your body goes through silent, natural changes. Metabolism slows down. You burn fewer calories even at rest. Insulin sensitivity drops. Sugar lingers longer in your bloodstream. Arteries stiffen, making blood pressure harder to control. Inflammation rises, silently damaging your heart and brain. Digestive enzymes weaken, making it harder to process heavy meals or certain fats. So when a senior eats a bowl of healthy granola that's actually full of 15 grams sugar, bad fats, oxidized oils, hidden sodium, what happens? Your blood sugar spikes. Your arteries inflame. Your heart strains just to keep up. Let's look at a real-world example. Here's the label from a popular store-bought Heart Smart granola. Serving, half cup, calories, sugar, 12-gram fat, 8 grams including 1 gram saturated fat, sodium, 130 milligrams ingredients, whole grain oats, brown sugar, canola oil, crisp rice, dried fruit blend, honey, salt, soy lecithin. Now compare that to a Krispy Kreme glazed donut. Serving 1 donut, calories 190, sugar, 10 grams fat, 11 grams sodium, 85 milligrams. In some ways, the granola is worse. More sugar, more sodium, more carbs, and we eat twice or 3 times the serving size without noticing. Seniors often say, I eat a light breakfast, just some granola with milk. But in reality, that light breakfast could be sabotaging your heart day after day. Granola's sugar trap. Why it hurts your heart. When you eat granola with added sugars, even from natural sources like honey or maple, you trigger an insulin spike. That might be manageable at 30, but at 70, it can lead to blood sugar crashes mid-morning, leading to fatigue or dizziness, increased triglycerides, insulin resistance, fat storage in the liver and around the heart, systemic inflammation that weakens artery walls. A 2021 study in Circulation found that older adults who consumed more than 15 grams of added sugar at breakfast had a 23% higher risk of cardiovascular events, including heart attack and arrhythmia. Even more dangerous, many of these individuals believed they were eating healthy. Commercial granola is often coated in canola oil, soybean oil, palm oil, natural oil blend. These oils oxidize when baked at high temperatures, and oxidized oils are like rust inside your bloodstream. They damage the endothelium, the delicate lining inside your blood vessels. This damage makes it easier for plaque to build up, triggers inflammatory responses from your immune system, hardens arteries, a condition called arteriosclerosis, slows down blood flow to your heart and brain. If you're already managing high cholesterol, high blood pressure, or diabetes, even a few tablespoons of oxidized oil daily can push you further into heart risk territory. Granola doesn't taste salty, but manufacturers often add salt to um, enhance the flavor, extend shelf life, balance sweetness. And that's where the trap is. You're eating something sweet and unknowingly raising your sodium intake. Just 1 cup of granola may contain up to 300 milligrams of sodium. Add milk or yogurt, you could be looking at 500 to 600 milligrams per meal. The American Heart Association recommends seniors consume less than 500 milligrams per day. If breakfast already eats up a third or more, it puts strain on your blood pressure, fluid balance, heart rhythm stability. Seniors with kidney issues, in particular, are at double risk when excess sodium sneaks in silently. Look at any granola bag. It will say something like serving size 1/4 cup or a half cup. That's 4 to 8 spoonfuls. But in reality, most seniors pour a bowl and fill it halfway, easily 1 to 1.5 cups. That means triple the sugar, triple the sodium, triple the fat, triple the heart risk, and all before 9 a.m. This isn't carelessness, it's poor packaging, misleading health claims, a culture that says if it says whole grain, it must be good. What granola does to your morning heart rhythm. Many seniors with heart conditions report something subtle. I feel a little fluttery in the chest. I'm tired right after breakfast. My hands swell by lunchtime. I get dizzy if I don't sit down after eating. These are not random. They're signals from your heart. If you start your day with a sugar, salt, oil bomb, even if it's labeled healthy, your body reacts by spiking blood sugar, releasing insulin, increasing sodium retention, raising your blood pressure, increasing oxidative stress. It's like asking your 70-year-old heart to run a race while it's still warming up. And the result? Morning fatigue, pressure in the chest, higher risk of atrial fibrillation or silent ischemia. The goal is not fear, it's awareness. You don't need to throw away your granola, but you do need to. Read every label. Choose options with less than 5 grams sugar per serving. Look for no added oils or air-baked methods. Avoid sodium over 100 milligrams per serving. Watch your portion size. Measure it. Don't guess. Better yet, make your own. We'll show you how in part 6, because the food you start your day with becomes the fuel for your heart. And after 60, every heartbeat counts. Part 2, sugar, the sweet assassin. It doesn't burn, it builds. If you're over 60 and you've been told to watch your salt, you've probably taken it seriously. But what about sugar? Not candy, not cake. We're talking about the sugar that hides inside healthy foods. Breakfast bars, granola, yogurt, fruit smoothies, heart smart cereals, especially granola. And the truth is this: sugar doesn't just add sweetness, it fuels inflammation, destabilizes your blood vessels, and slowly weakens your heart over time. Let's uncover how this silent assassin works and why seniors need to be especially alert. The science of what sugar does after 60. In your youth, your body could tolerate sugar hits fairly well. Insulin did its job. Your liver burned through the excess. You stayed active enough to keep things in balance. But after 60, everything slows down. Insulin becomes sluggish, liver metabolism weakens, cellular repair slows. Fat storage increases, especially around your abdomen and organs. Inflammation rises in your heart and arteries, even without symptoms. Sugar, instead of being burned, becomes a burden. And this burden shows up in 3 dangerous ways. Blood sugar spikes, causing dizziness, fatigue, and inflammation. Glycation, sugar molecules bind to proteins in your blood, thickening vessel walls. Fatty liver and triglyceride rise, a leading cause of cardiovascular disease in seniors. And the sugar in your granola? It's often the worst kind. The sugars added to granola are usually brown sugar, honey, maple syrup, molasses, cane sugar, evaporated cane juice, a fancy term for sugar, fruit juice concentrate, even worse. These are simple sugars, quickly absorbed, fast-acting, and insulin spiking. They hit your bloodstream like a freight train. And while they may taste natural, they're not harmless, especially not for an aging heart. A study in the British Medical Journal 2020 found that added sugars, even from natural sources, were significantly linked to increased coronary artery plaque, elevated C-reactive protein, a marker of arterial inflammation, higher rates of heart failure among adults over 65. The blood sugar roller coaster, and why seniors are more vulnerable. When you start your morning with sweetened granola, here's what happens. You feel good for 30 to 60 minutes. Your brain lights up. Dopamine rises. You feel fueled. Then the crash. As insulin kicks in, your blood sugar drops. Your energy dips, you feel foggy, shaky, or sleepy. Your body compensates. Cortisol and adrenaline are released to restore energy. But over time, this repeated stress damages your heart. Now imagine doing this every single morning. For a 40-year-old, this is a nuisance. For a 70-year-old, it's a silent attack on the heart. Every time sugar spikes your blood, tiny injuries occur. Microscopic cracks form in artery walls. The body rushes to patch these cracks with cholesterol and fibrin. Over time, these patches harden into plaque. Plaque narrows your arteries, reducing oxygen to the heart and brain. This process is called atherosclerosis, and it's the root cause of heart attacks, strokes, angina, vascular dementia. Here's the twist. You won't feel any of this happening. There's no pain, no warning signs, just a slow narrowing until one day something ruptures. Many granola brands boast sweetened only with honey, all natural maple syrup, no refined sugar. But here's what the science says. Fructose, the main sugar in honey and maple syrup, has been linked to increased fatty liver disease, higher triglycerides, elevated uric acid, a heart and kidney risk factor, greater abdominal obesity. A 2023 meta-analysis in Nutrients Journal concluded fructose-containing natural sweeteners can still contribute to cardiovascular risk when consumed in moderate to high quantities, especially in sedentary or older populations. In short, honey may sound wholesome, but in a senior's bloodstream, it still acts like sugar. Meet Patricia, 74. She walks daily. No history of heart disease. Eats healthy, or so she thought. Her daily breakfast, 1 cup of store-bought granola, a sliced banana, a dollop of flavored yogurt, a cup of tea with sugar. She thought this was light and energizing, but she was consuming over 40 grams of sugar before 9 a.m., nearly 1,000 milligrams of sodium, multiple types of vegetable oils. She began noticing light chest pressure when walking uphill, mid-morning fatigue, puffy ankles by late afternoon. Doctors later found arterial inflammation and an irregular heart rhythm. She wasn't diabetic, not overweight. It was her breakfast. How sugar alters your heart's electrical signals. Your heart runs on electricity. That's right. Tiny electrical pulses tell your heart when to beat. But sugar affects electrolyte balance, especially magnesium, potassium, sodium. When blood sugar spikes and crashes repeatedly, these minerals shift unnaturally, leading to palpitations, skip beats, atrial fibrillation. AFib is one of the leading causes of stroke and heart failure in adults over 65. And high sugar intake is a known independent risk factor for developing AFib, even in non-diabetics. You may not see it, but your liver does. When your body has excess sugar, especially fructose, and nowhere to put it, it converts it into fat, not fat under your skin. Fat around your liver, pancreas, heart muscle. This is called visceral fat, and it's linked to high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance, sudden cardiac death. Even if you look skinny, this silent fat can build for years without a symptom. There's another organ sugar harms, and it affects your heart, the brain. When sugar spikes and crashes become routine, the nervous system becomes destabilized. That leads to increased stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, poor sleep quality, higher resting heart rate, reduced heart rate variability, HRV, a key marker of heart resilience. In fact, a 2022 study in neurocardiology found that seniors with high sugar diets had lower HRV scores and were 2.5x more likely to suffer heart rhythm disorders. Here's the truth. That one bowl of granola, that natural yogurt with fruit, that drizzle of honey could set your heart on a sugar-fueled roller coaster for the next 12 hours. Your blood pressure rises, your arteries stiffen, your inflammation builds, your energy dips, your heart grows tired. This happens quietly, daily. And most seniors have no idea it's sugar doing the damage. But now, you know. Part 3, the oils that harden arteries. It's not the fat you see, it's the damage you don't. When you think of food that damages the heart, most people picture a greasy cheeseburger, a plate of fried chicken, or a bag of salty chips. But what if the real danger wasn't greasy or obvious? What if it was golden brown, crispy, lightly sweet, and sitting quietly in your pantry, labeled wholesome? Yes, we're still talking about granola, because most store-bought granola contains something far more dangerous than calories: highly processed vegetable oils. And these are slowly, silently harming your arteries every day. Especially after 60, your heart becomes more vulnerable to oxidative stress, vascular stiffness, and inflammatory triggers, and that's exactly what these oils bring. Let's take a closer look. Flip the back of almost any granola bag and you'll see canola oil, soybean oil, sunflower oil, palm oil, vegetable oil blend, sometimes even corn oil. These oils are cheap, light in color, easy to spray or coat over oats, long shelf life, but they are also chemically refined, easily oxidized, high in omega 6 fatty acids, unstable when exposed to heat or air. And every step in the manufacturing process, from extraction to baking, increases their potential to damage your cardiovascular system. What is oil oxidation and why is it so dangerous? Let's simplify the science. Vegetable oils are made up of polyunsaturated fatty acids, UFAs. These fats have multiple weak bonds that break easily under heat, light, or oxygen exposure, which happens during processing, packaging, storage, and baking granola at high temps. When those bonds break, they form lipid peroxides, unstable, highly reactive molecules. And when you consume oxidized oils regularly, these compounds travel through your bloodstream and damage the endothelium, the lining of your arteries, trigger an inflammatory response, accelerate the formation of arterial plaque, increase risk of atherosclerosis, stroke, and heart failure. And this happens without warning signs. No pain, no sensation, just slow corrosion from within. Imagine your arteries like a flexible garden hose. They're designed to stretch, expand, and deliver blood smoothly. But as we age, and especially when exposed to oxidized fats, the arterial lining begins to stiffen. It becomes less flexible, less responsive, more prone to cracking, scarring, clotting. And all it takes is a tiny trigger, like elevated blood pressure or a sharp rise in sugar, to cause a plaque rupture and possibly a stroke or heart attack. In fact, the American Heart Journal published findings in 2021 showing that daily intake of oxidized PUFAs increases arterial stiffness markers in seniors by 28% within 6 months. You don't need symptoms to have damaged arteries. A 75-year-old woman can look vibrant, walk daily, and eat well. But if she's been eating oxidized oils daily for 20 years, her arteries might show microtears, inflammatory white blood cell activity, cholesterol deposits trying to repair damage, narrowed passages reducing oxygen flow to the heart and brain. This doesn't show up in routine blood tests. It doesn't show in blood pressure alone. It hides until one day it doesn't. 3.5 Why seniors are more vulnerable to these oils. After 60, your body becomes less efficient at processing harmful fats and neutralizing free radicals. Here's what changes: lower glutathione levels, your master antioxidant, slower liver detox, weaker cell membrane repair, more fragile blood vessel walls, accumulated oxidative stress from decades past. So, what you could get away with at 40, you can't at 70. And that includes eating oxidized oil coated granola for breakfast every day. Let's break down a popular granola brand label. Brand Crunchy Harvest Maple Granola. Serving half cup, calories 230. Fat 9 grams saturated fat, 1 grams ingredients. Whole oats, cane sugar, canola oil, sunflower seeds, maple flavor, salt, soy lecithin. Nowhere does it say dangerous, but here's the deeper problem. Canola and sunflower oils were both refined, bleached, and deodorized, BD. Oats were baked at 325 degrees Fahrenheit, which oxidizes oils further. Maple flavor often contains propylene glycol, a petroleum derivative. Even if the label looks clean, the processing reality is not, and every spoonful adds to your body's oxidative burden, what these oils do to your blood. Once consumed, oxidized fats enter your bloodstream and can increase LDL oxidation, making bad cholesterol more likely to form plaque. Lower HDL, the good cholesterol that protects your heart. Reduce nitric oxide production, weakening blood vessel dilation. Promote clot formation. A 2020 review in Frontiers in Aging found that seniors who consumed oxidized oils daily had a 34% higher risk of cardiovascular mortality, poorer circulation to the brain, increased signs of vascular aging. Processed vegetable oils are very high in omega 6 fatty acids, and while omega 6 is not bad in itself, the imbalance is the real issue. Optimal ratio: omega 6, omega 3 equals 4 to 1. Modern granola eaters ratio: 21 or even 30:1. Too much omega 6 promotes systemic inflammation, blood vessel narrowing, platelet clumping, which increases stroke risk. This inflammatory imbalance has been directly linked to arrhythmia, hypertension, coronary artery disease. And granola eaten daily can silently widen this gap. Henry, 69, ate a bowl of granola every morning with nuts, yogurt, and almond milk. He walked twice a day, didn't smoke, had normal cholesterol. But at 71, he suffered a minor stroke. After evaluation, doctors found early stage atherosclerosis, signs of oxidative stress, elevated omega 6 levels. The cause? A diet high in health foods with daily exposure to oxidized oils, added sugars, inflammatory fats. He wasn't overweight, he didn't feel sick, but his arteries told a different story. How to spot dangerous oils in your granola. On the ingredient list, avoid canola oil, sunflower oil, soybean oil, corn oil, palm oil, vegetable oil without specification, hydrogenated anything, oil blend, or proprietary coating. Choose instead cold pressed olive oil, rarely found in commercial granola, homemade granola using coconut oil in moderation, oil free air baked granola, or make your own using nut butters or banana mash as a binder. Here's your gentle upgrade plan. Stop eating store bought granola with any of the oils listed above. Start reading labels like a heart detective. Replace granola with rolled oats plus chia seeds, berries, Greek yogurt, flax, walnuts, overnight oats with cinnamon plus almond butter. If you still want granola, make it at home with oats, chopped nuts, cinnamon, and no oil at all. Even one small change can begin repairing the damage from years of silent oil exposure. Your arteries can heal, but only if you stop feeding them what breaks them. Part 4, the sodium sneak attack. It doesn't taste salty, but it still strains your heart. If we asked most seniors, what's the first food you think of when I say too much salt, you might hear bacon, ham, pickles, instant noodles, or fast food fries. You wouldn't expect granola to be on that list. It's sweet, crunchy, wholesome looking, but not salty, right? Here's the shocking truth. Many granola products contain just as much sodium per serving as a slice of deli ham, and some have even more. The salt doesn't jump out at your taste buds, but it's there, hiding in plain sight. And for a senior's heart, even small amounts of hidden sodium can build up into serious consequences. Let's talk about why. Why salt is more dangerous after 60. Your body needs some sodium. It helps regulate fluids, nerve function, and muscle contractions. But with age, your internal balancing systems weaken. Your kidneys become less efficient at excreting excess salt. Your blood vessels become stiffer and less able to dilate. Your baroreceptors, which regulate pressure, lose sensitivity. Your heart becomes more vulnerable to overload. The result, even moderate sodium intake can lead to increased blood pressure, fluid retention, swelling in hands, feet, face, higher risk of atrial fibrillation, added strain on the left ventricle of your heart. The scariest part? Most seniors who consume too much sodium don't feel it right away. It's not a burning pain. It's a quiet increase in pressure, slowly stretching your arteries, silently tiring your heart. Most people assume granola equals sugar only, but take a closer look at the label. A typical store-bought granola may contain 150 to 300 milligrams of sodium per half cup serving. Now let's do some basic breakfast math. 1 cup granola equals up to 600 milligrams sodium. Add milk or yogurt equals another 150 milligrams. Add dried fruit preserved with sodium sulfite equals 50 to 100 milligram more. That's 750 to 850 milligrams of sodium before 9 a.m. And the recommended daily sodium intake for seniors, just 1,500 milligrams total, according to the American Heart Association. So you've already eaten half or more of your daily limit in one meal. But it doesn't taste salty. Why not? That's what makes it dangerous. Granola is engineered to mask salt with sugar, cinnamon, maple syrup, coconut flakes, artificial vanilla. So you don't taste the salt, but your arteries do. Your blood pressure does, your heart does. It's a form of stealth sodium. A 2019 study in Journal of Nutrition for Aging found that seniors who consumed processed cereals and granola regularly were 3.5 times more likely to exceed sodium limits without realizing it, even when tracking sugar intake carefully. Here's what excess sodium can do slowly, quietly: draws water into the bloodstream, raises blood volume, increases pressure inside arteries, makes blood vessels less flexible, harder for your body to lower pressure naturally, forces the heart to pump harder, leading to left ventricular hypertrophy, thickened heart muscle, disrupts electrical conduction, can cause arrhythmias, especially AFib, worsens kidney function, reduces ability to eliminate waste and control pressure. None of these effects are immediate, but over weeks, months, years, they add up. And for seniors, That's what leads to sudden dizziness, shortness of breath, irregular heartbeat, swelling in the ankles, unexpected heart attacks or strokes. Gloria 72 was a retired librarian who loved her healthy morning routine: bowl of low-fat granola, fat-free yogurt, a banana, herbal tea. She walked daily, slept well, and avoided fast food. But she noticed puffy ankles in the afternoon, a mild tightness in her chest on stairs, blood pressure that kept rising, despite her clean lifestyle. After food journaling and testing sodium levels, her doctor discovered she was consuming over 2,000 milligrams of sodium per day. Her granola alone accounted for 700, 800 milligrams daily. Her yogurt and healthy cereal bars added another 600 to 700 milligrams. The result? She wasn't eating junk, she was eating stealth salt every day. Most seniors don't report salt intake as a problem until symptoms appear. Look out for these signs. Rings or shoes feel tighter in the afternoon. You wake up with puffy eyes or fingers. You feel winded climbing stairs, even without weight gain. Your weight fluctuates 2 to 4 pounds overnight. You need to urinate more at night. You feel your heart skipping or fluttering. These are not just aging. They could be signals that your heart is working harder than it should because your sodium load is too high. How granola brands use sodium without you knowing. Here are the main tricks. Sodium as a preservative extends shelf life. Sodium bicarbonate used to puff grains. Salted nuts or seeds added during mixing. Sodium-based flavor enhancers like MSG alternatives. Salted dried fruits, especially raisins or dates. The label may say no salt added, but still list baking soda, disodium phosphate, sodium citrate, sodium ascorbate. Each adds to your total sodium intake. And when you eat granola every morning, that salt builds up like quiet pressure in your pipes. We've already discussed the dangers of sugar, but here's what happens when you combine sugar plus salt. Sugar raises insulin, causes fluid retention. Salt draws more water into your blood vessels. Your heart faces double pressure, volume plus force. Result higher risk of hypertensive damage, especially to tiny brain and kidney vessels. This combo has been strongly linked to silent strokes, especially in older women, vascular dementia, congestive heart failure, and the worst granolas, especially protein or energy versions, combine sugar and sodium to addictive effect. Heart-safe granola choices. It's not about fear, it's about control. Here's how you can still enjoy granola without hurting your heart. Check the label. Sodium under 100 milligrams per serving. No sodium bicarbonate or disodium phosphate. Use a measuring cup to control portion. Replace with homemade blends. Rolled oats plus cinnamon, chopped nuts, no salt. Unsweetened coconut flakes, sliced fresh fruit, roasted buckwheat or quinoa clusters made at home. Choose unsalted or lightly salted. Nuts and seeds. Limit total sodium in breakfast to under 300 milligrams. If you make your own granola, use no salt at all. Let the flavor come from spices like nutmeg, clove, or cardamom. Add a hint of vanilla extract or unsweetened applesauce for aroma. Your heart is not asking you to be perfect. It's asking you to notice that quiet swelling in your legs, that flutter in your chest, that blood pressure creeping up year after year. These are not just side effects of time. They are responses to your daily choices. And the good news is this: you can reverse pressure, you can lower strain, you can protect your heart, one spoonful at a time. Part 5: What it does to a senior's heart. It doesn't hurt yet, but it's already happening. When you eat something harmful, like a spoiled meal or food poisoning, your body reacts quickly. You feel it. You get sick. You know something's wrong. But with your heart, it doesn't always speak up right away. In fact, it often stays silent until the damage is done. And that's what makes foods like granola, with its hidden sugars, oils, and sodium, so dangerous. They don't attack your heart with pain, they wear it down with silence. Especially after 60, your heart becomes less forgiving. It's been beating over 2.55 billion times by then, and every beat now matters more than ever. So let's talk about exactly what these hidden dangers in granola do to a senior's heart. Over time, your heart depends on strong elastic arteries to carry blood to your brain, lungs, muscles, and kidneys. But when your daily breakfast is loaded with processed sugar, oxidized vegetable oils, sneaky sodium, these artery walls begin to stiffen and inflame. Here's what happens. Sugar triggers microscopic cracks in artery linings. Your body tries to patch them using cholesterol and fibrin. The patch hardens into plaque. Sodium causes water retention, increasing blood volume. Oil oxidation releases free radicals, worsening the inflammation. Over time, this leads to atherosclerosis, a slow buildup of fatty deposits that narrow the arteries. And narrowed arteries, they mean less oxygen to your heart muscle, your brain, and your limbs. Your heart is a pump. Its job is to move blood through your body 24/7 without rest. But as the arteries stiffen and the blood volume increases thanks to salt, your heart must pump harder to keep blood moving. This constant pressure wears it down. It begins to enlarge, particularly the left ventricle. This condition, called left ventricular hypertrophy, leads to fatigue, shortness of breath, irregular heartbeat, increased risk of sudden cardiac death, and it often happens without symptoms, especially in women over 65. A 2022 study in Journal of Geriatric Cardiology found that older adults who consumed high sodium, high sugar breakfasts were 2.8 times more likely to develop left heart dysfunction over a 5-year period, even with no history of heart disease. Your heart doesn't just beat, it follows a rhythm. This rhythm is regulated by electrical impulses flowing through your heart tissue like a musical conductor. But that rhythm can be disrupted by imbalanced electrolytes due to sodium overload or sugar crashes, chronic inflammation from oxidized oils, stress responses triggered by blood sugar swings. These changes may lead to palpitations, skipped beats, atrial fibrillation, AFib. AFib is one of the most common arrhythmias in people over 60 and a leading cause of stroke. And it's not just linked to old age. Studies now show that dietary inflammation plays a major role in triggering AFib, even in seniors without other risk factors. We often forget this. Your brain depends entirely on your heart to deliver oxygen-rich blood. When your arteries narrow, stiffen, or clog, your brain pays the price. This leads to brain fog, dizziness, confusion, tiny silent strokes you never feel, and eventually, vascular dementia. The National Institute on Aging now recognizes diet-related atherosclerosis as one of the most modifiable risks for late-life cognitive decline. That means the food you eat today may shape how clearly you think 10 years from now. Even something as small as your breakfast, especially if it's slowly damaging your circulation, they mask the warning signs until it's too late. Here's the hardest part. You may feel fine right up until the day something goes wrong. Granola doesn't make you feel sick, it doesn't give you heartburn, it doesn't leave a greasy aftertaste. So it feels light, safe, even nourishing. But it's doing something quietly destructive behind the scenes, raising your blood pressure slowly, hardening your arteries silently, exhausting your heart over months, setting the stage for sudden events, stroke, attack, collapse. This is why so many seniors are caught off guard. They say, but I eat clean. I don't eat fried foods. I avoid processed meat. And they're right. But they were never told that a sweet, innocent-looking bowl of granola could be just as dangerous, especially if eaten daily long term. Think of it like this. One bowl of granola isn't a crisis. One sugary breakfast isn't a sentence. But 300 of those breakfasts per year for 5, 10, 20 years, that's thousands of micro hits to your heart and arteries. And at some point, your heart can no longer compensate. This is why early awareness matters. It's why we don't wait for symptoms. It's why noticing now can give your heart a second chance. Here are subtle signs your heart might already be under strain. You feel tired in the morning, even after sleeping. Your blood pressure slowly increases year after year. You feel short of breath, doing things you used to do easily. You have a strange sense of tightness in your chest or neck. Your ankles or fingers swell by day's end. You wake up at night to urinate more than once. Your heart feels like it flutters occasionally. These aren't just aging. They may be your heart asking you to listen. And the good news is, you still can. Here's the part most seniors need to hear. It's not too late. Even if you've eaten granola for years, even if you've already been diagnosed with hypertension or high cholesterol, even if your arteries are already showing plaque, and you can still reverse the trend. Your arteries respond to less sugar, less sodium, and less inflammation. Your heart becomes more efficient, your rhythm becomes more stable, your energy improves, your brain feels clearer, and all of that can begin with your next breakfast. Part 6, Better Breakfast Choices. The first bite of the day can heal or harm. You get to choose. By now, you've seen the truth. That bowl of granola, sweet, crunchy, comforting, may not be as heart friendly as it claims. But the solution isn't fear, it's replacement, it's empowerment. It's knowing what your body and your heart actually needs in the morning. Because the first thing you eat when you wake up does more than fill your stomach. It sets your blood sugar rhythm, blood pressure tone, heart rate variability, energy and clarity, and even your emotional state. So let's explore smart, heart protecting breakfast choices, ones that nourish your years, not steal them. After age 60, your body changes in silent but powerful ways. To protect your heart, your breakfast should help. Stabilize blood sugar, keep blood pressure in check, support your arteries with anti inflammatory nutrients, provide steady energy, not sugar spikes, reduce silent inflammation. That means your ideal breakfast is low in added sugar, low in sodium, rich in fiber, filled with natural antioxidants, easy to digest, made with love, not labels. Let's look at what that actually means with real foods, not theories. Heart smart swaps out with the granola, in with these. Skip store bought granola, instant sweetened oatmeal packets, flavored yogurts, breakfast bars, fruit juices, protein granola clusters. Choose instead old fashioned rolled oats, unsweetened, cooked slowly or soaked overnight, high in soluble fiber, beta glucan, lowers LDL cholesterol, naturally sodium free. Plain Greek yogurt or cottage cheese. High in protein, supports muscle. Choose low fat if cholesterol is a concern. Add your own toppings instead of buying flavored. Chia seed pudding. Soak 2 tablespoons chia seeds in almond milk overnight. Add cinnamon, blueberries, or a few crushed walnuts. Excellent source of omega 3s, stabilizes blood sugar. Boiled or scrambled eggs in moderation, packed with B vitamins, choline, good for the brain. Don't fry them in oil, steam, poach, or soft boil. Avocado on whole grain toast, packed with potassium and heart healthy fats, supports stable blood pressure. Homemade muesli, unbaked oats, chopped nuts, seeds, a sprinkle of cinnamon. Add grated apple or berries for gentle sweetness. No oil, no sugar, no preservatives. Here's a simple formula that works every time. Bowl equals fiber plus healthy fat plus protein plus color spice. Base, rolled oats, cooked quinoa, chia pudding, plain yogurt. Add fiber and crunch, walnuts, flax seeds, pumpkin seeds, sliced almonds. Healthy fat, avocado nut butter, unsweetened, olive oil drizzle on savory options. Protein boost, boiled egg, hemp seeds, unsweetened Greek yogurt, low sodium cottage cheese. Color, antioxidants, blueberries, strawberries, kiwi, grated apple, pomegranate seeds. Spice, anti inflammatory, cinnamon, turmeric in warm oats, ginger, nutmeg. Optional sweetener, a teaspoon of raw honey, not every day. Mashed banana, medjool date, 1 piece, finely chopped. Here's a sample week. Monday, oatmeal with flax seeds, cinnamon, blueberries, and chopped walnuts. Herbal tea on the side. Tuesday, chia pudding with unsweetened almond milk, strawberries, and a sprinkle of sunflower seeds. Wednesday, half an avocado mashed on whole grain toast, plus 1 soft-boiled egg, plus a few grape tomatoes. Thursday, plain Greek yogurt with grated apple, cinnamon, and a handful of sliced almonds. Friday, homemade muesli, raw oats, pumpkin seeds, raisins soaked overnight in oat milk. Saturday, vegetable omelet, spinach, onion, tomato, plus 1 slice of sprouted grain toast. Sunday, quinoa breakfast bowl with banana, tahini drizzle, and sesame seeds. Each meal is under 5 grams added sugar, less than 300 milligrams sodium, balanced in fats, fiber, and protein, easy to prepare, kind to your arteries and blood sugar. You don't have to cook every morning. Here are ideas to save time. Overnight oats. Soak oats plus chia, nut milk, cinnamon. Store in jars, ready in the morning. Boiled eggs for the week. Boil 6 at once, keep in fridge for up to 5 days. Batch cook muesli. Mix dry oats, seeds, cinnamon, nuts. Store in a container. Add fruit/yogurt fresh. Fruit packs. Slice fruit into small bags. Freeze. Add to smoothies or yogurt bowls fast. Pre-cut veggies for omelets. Bell peppers, spinach, onions. Chop and store. Takes 3 minutes to cook. Preparation is not just about saving time, it's about saving your energy and your heart. What to drink with breakfast? Avoid fruit juices, even no sugar added, sweetened plant milks, instant coffee mixes with sugar creamer. Instead, try water with lemon, supports digestion, herbal teas, chamomile, ginger, cinnamon, black coffee, limit to 1 to 2 cups, no sugar, unsweetened soy or almond milk. Hydration supports blood flow, prevents sodium retention, and helps your heart pump more easily. Remember, it's not just about what you eat, it's about how you eat it. A rushed breakfast, eaten while watching TV or scrolling the phone, can activate your stress response. Try this instead. Sit near a window, take 3 deep breaths before your first bite, put on soft background music, chew slowly and appreciate textures. Say one thing you're grateful for. This signals your nervous system. We are safe, we are calm, we are nourished. And that message helps your heart rate stabilize, digestion improve, and your body receive nutrients more efficiently. Remember this: don't eat to be good, eat to be strong. You're not following rules, you're following wisdom. This isn't a diet, it's protection, it's self respect, it's honoring a heart that's beaten every second of your life, even while you slept, even when you didn't know it needed help. The best breakfast is one that says, I'm still here, I still matter, and I still choose life, one loving bite at a time. We've covered a lot in this video. You learned that granola, despite its golden glow and health claims, may not be the friend your heart needs after 60. You discovered how sugar, oxidized oils, and hidden sodium work together quietly to inflame your arteries, weaken your heart rhythm, raise your pressure, and silently steal years from your life. But this video wasn't created to scare you. It was created to awaken you to the quiet power in your hands, your spoon, your morning. Because every single day you have a choice: to eat with awareness, not habit, to nourish with respect, not guilt, to begin again, not from fear, but from wisdom. And that's what true senior wisdom is all about. The good news: it's never too late to listen to your heart. You are not too old. You are not too far gone. You are not too late. Your body, even now, is listening, healing, responding. And when you give it steady energy, fewer inflammatory triggers, clean nourishment, and a calmer morning rhythm, your heart breathes easier. Your blood flows freer. Your life, no matter your age, becomes more vibrant, more stable, and more yours. If this video spoke to you, here's what to do next. 1. Like this video. Help other seniors discover it through the algorithm. One tap could protect another life. 2. Share it with a loved one over 60, a parent, a friend, a neighbor, someone who deserves to know. Comment below. What's one small change you'll make to your breakfast this week? Let's inspire each other. One habit, one bite, one heart at a time. 4. Subscribe to True Senior Wisdom. This channel is your sanctuary for health, clarity, and dignity after 60. We don't just give advice, we honor your body, we protect your wisdom, and we walk with you, one choice at a time. And remember this: your heart is not just an organ, it is a history, a memory keeper, a quiet warrior. It's carried grief, joy, loss, strength, and silent endurance for decades. So tomorrow morning before your first bite, pause, listen to it, thank it, and feed it the way it deserves to be fed. Not with trends, not with guilt, but with care, with slowness, with love. You are still here, you are still growing, and your heart, old as it may be, still wants to live. Live wisely, live gently, live long.